Hey Rockstars, I wanted to try something new on this video. This is going to be more of a basic review of some of the basic things you can do with Rockstar and some of the advanced things. As you notice from my website, there's not a whole lot of documentation, but I don't like writing it. You probably don't like reading it, but I thought a quick video tutorial would be useful to cover some of the basic features. So when you log into the Okta homepage, you see Rockstar here on the upper left-hand corner. So the menu itself, when you first install it, shows open like this. Now you can toggle it closed temporarily by just clicking on the button here where the menu is, just like any other sort of hamburger menu. And when you refresh the page, it memorizes, it opens it back up where you had it before. There's a minimize button I added recently here. So if you click that, it'll stay minimized. And now if you refresh the page, it's minimized. And if you want, you can maximize it again, or if you want to just use it temporarily to access some feature, and then again, next time you refresh, it'll still be minimized. So you can operate in minimize mode or maximize mode, whatever you prefer. I like the maximize mode because that way you can see all the features as you're navigating from screen to screen, and you'll see more of that in just a second. But I know that it can get in the way a little bit, so this is a way to get it out of the way. Obviously, the other two buttons here are the help button, which takes you back to my homepage, which again doesn't have a whole lot of documentation on it, and then also the close button. If it's really in the way, you can close it, and when you refresh the page, it'll come back. So as far as the end user options here, there's a couple. There's one here called Show SSO, and what that'll do is, let's look at something here like Salesforce. So if you notice, it just says salesforce.com on it. There's nothing underneath it. But if I click the Show SSO button, you'll notice that this icon and every other icon now says Show SSO on it. And if I wanted to do single sign-on, if I wanted to see what the single sign-on would look like into Salesforce, all I have to do is click the Show SSO button. It'll go out and get an actual SAML assertion. So this is useful for SAML apps, and it'll show you kind of the interesting things about that application. I try to highlight the things that are most interesting to me in yellow, so that things like the issuer is highlighted in yellow here. Again, the issuer is repeated here. The name ID is shown here. Audience, and then things like attributes. So I have a portal ID, an organization ID, and a site URL. These actually don't have any values in them, but if they did, they would also show up here in yellow. So again, this is useful, especially when you're either first setting up a new SAML integration, or maybe you have one particular user who is having problems logging into SAML. Let's say it's working for other people. You can say, oh, it looks like, I'm sending the wrong username. The username doesn't match what the application is expecting, so that's why I'm getting an error. So that's a useful tool. There's other tools out there like SAML Tracer that do similar things. This was just kind of my version of it and my little unique take on it. And then if you switch to another tab, you'll notice that the buttons go away, the Show SSO stuff goes away. The API Explorer, I'll cover more when I switch over to the admin side. And then this one here, the Tiny Apps, was just kind of a fun experiment of taking these kind of larger icons and then making them small. And then if you don't like it, you can click it again and it'll make them big again. This one, again, will remember it. So if you click Tiny Apps and you refresh the page or you log in later, it should render them tiny. And then if you want to switch them again, you can do that. And again, this last one here is the All Tiny Apps. And what it'll do is just show you every single icon that's in your org in just one large screen. Again, this was just kind of me messing around, experimenting with some of the cool features, and just trying to understand what else I could use Rockstar for. So that's basically it on the user side. Let's go ahead and switch over to the admin side and see some of the things that you can do. And so as you navigate from screen to screen within Rockstar, within Okta, Rockstar will show you different menus. If there is nothing really interesting, it'll just kind of show you this API Explorer. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But for example, if I go to Directory People, which is a common menu, you'll notice now it has information about users. So I can do a search users, I can do an export users. And again, the API Explorer will show up on pretty much every menu. Let me show you a couple more of the menus, and then I'll come back and explain what the options do. So again, if I'm looking at people, I get people stuff here or user stuff. If I switch over to the group view, now you notice it's showing me group specific things. So how to search groups, how to export groups, etc. Similarly, if I switch over to applications, now I'm looking at export apps, app nodes, etc., etc. So again, as you navigate, Rockstar's kind of your little buddy, your roadie, if you will, and helps show you options that are specific to what you're looking at. Similarly, if I go to a specific user, I see information about that specific user. So if I want to see additional information for that user, I just click Show User, and it'll show you all the attributes for that user. If I want to do a verify factors on the user, what this will do is actually look at all the factors that the user is enrolled in. This would be useful for a help desk person, someone working at a help desk. Let's say I'm going to call the help desk because I need help. Let's say maybe I've lost one of my factors. I want to re-enroll. And in order to do that, I want to call the help desk, or you just want to authenticate me for whatever reason. What the help desk person can do is find me within Okta, click the verify factors button, pick one of the factors that I'm enrolled in, and again, it'll show you only the factors that you're actually enrolled in. And when you click next, it'll send that user an actual text message. You'll notice on the upper left there it says waiting. And then in just a second, it should show up on my phone here. Okay, and I just got the notification. I pressed yes, it's me. And then again, notice it still says it's waiting. And again, these other factors should work as well. So I could just as easily type in the OTP from my phone. I also have Google Authenticator. I could use a hard token, SMS, voice call, etc. So any of the factors that are shown here, you should be able to actually test with. Also, if I want to see the administrator roles, now you can go here from the security menu, go over to the administrators menu, and you should see all the administrators that are listed. But I had a situation where a customer had 50,000 users, and sometimes it was hard for them when they do add administrator. They would search for a user, and it was hard for them to tell which user was which, because you see sometimes they show up with an email address. Maybe I have one user that has 2 different accounts, and it's hard to tell which user is which. So one of the things I did here is if you click on the administrator roles, it actually shows you all the roles that you're enrolled in, and then you can just revoke it from here. So similarly, if I do a search for Jane, for example, she's one of my administrators. Let's see if I pick the right one. And I do administrator roles. Yeah, so it shows here that she's a super administrator. I can just revoke it by pressing revoke. It takes about a second, and then it'll refresh, and now it shows that this user is not an admin. But if I wanted to grant any one of these roles, like let's say I want Jane to be my organizational admin, I can click that, and now it shows up. And then when I go back here to administrators again, I see now that Jane has been changed from a super administrator to an org administrator. Let me change her back real quick before I forget, because I need Jane to have super admin pros. Let's see what else. I can also set a user's password, and I can export group memberships. I don't know if there's anything fancy about this one. So it looks like Jane has a couple groups that she's a member of. And if I do an export, it opens up a CSV file, and then I can open up the CSV file and just see the ID, the name, and the group, the description, and the group type of all the groups that she's enrolled in. So then the similar functionality you'll find if we navigate back now to directory people. Same thing, I have an export users button. Now one of the things that this does is it actually calls the Okta API. All of Rockstar really is built on top of Okta APIs. So it will show you all the attributes that are in your particular tenant, including if you have custom attributes. So I have a bunch of custom attributes here that I've defined over the years. So those will show up here, and it'll show you obviously the standard out-of-the-box attributes as well. So you can just kind of scroll through here, click on a couple attributes that you want to export, and then you can either click export directly, or you can do what's called a query, filter, or search in addition. So the query, filter, or search, there's 3 different options that are available. And again, these are based on just the standard Okta API. In fact, there's 2 links here, one here, and actually it's the same link here. If you click help, it will open up to our developer.okta.com documentation, and it talks about for list users, there's 3 different ways to list. There's the find users with a Q or query. There's list users with a filter, and then there's list users with search. And then each one of these has documentation on how to actually do it. For example, this one says it searches first name, last name, or email. And again, you'll see that same information is listed here. I try to kind of summarize it. Hopefully it's pretty much the same. The filter, on the other hand, lists all users and tells you additional information. So if I go back to filter, I can do filter here. And again, it'll tell you the types of attributes that you can do a filter with. And then the last one is search, which is probably the most flexible one. It allows you to search any built-in profile attribute. So make sure you read some of the documentation on that if you want to use this advanced feature. And then what I've also done is this little dropdown has some kind of out-of-the-box queries, filters, and searches just to get you started. So for example, I can do Q equals Smith. Again, Q means query. So it'll query for anybody in my org named Smith. And again, that, as you can tell from here, that will search against the first name, the last name, or the email address. If I want to do a different type, maybe a filter, same thing, I can click the drop down and I can do, for example, show me all the users whose status is equal to deprovisioned. Notice some of these may be case sensitive. The syntax here is going to be pretty specific. So you want to make sure that you read the documentation and put in values here that are considered valid based on the documentation. Here's another example of using filter with the last name equal to Smith. And then similarly, I have some examples using search as well. Like I said, they all have different capabilities. So I can do a search equals deprovisioned, or again, a search of the last name equals Smith. And once you pick an attribute or a filter that you want to do, you can go ahead and click export, and you should notice a couple things will happen. This one actually says 0 users. Let me switch it to doe. I know I have a couple does in here. So let me close out of this. You should see a little pop-up window on the upper left here start to count down the users that it found. So it says loading, it found nine users, and it's done. And same thing, I can just open up the CSV file in Excel, and then I see all the different information that I listed. And again, these are the specific attributes that I picked. I can even make a nice, pretty little header here, or a table with headers, so the data is formatted nicely. If I do a large export, like for example, my org here has about 50,000 users, 52,000 users. I did that on purpose so I could test some of this larger loads. And by the way, I've tested this up to about 450,000 some odd users. It took about maybe 45 minutes to run that. It could, in theory, probably go up to maybe a couple million, but I haven't tested it that far. So if you have more than a couple million users, your mileage may vary as to whether Rockstar will be able to export all your users, or maybe you'll want to use some other script. I have scripts, by the way, that I've written in languages like PowerShell and Python. So if you want to check out some of those, I'll try to remember to put the link to my other GitHub repos in the links below. But let me do another export users. Let me take the filter out now so you can actually see what happens. So if you click export, it'll say loading, and then it's going to paginate 200 users at a time. That's the default. Again, if you're looking up here on the upper left, and it'll go all the way up until 50,000 until it stops, and then you should get your CSV after that. The other thing it'll try to do is it will observe rate limits as well. If you read some of the API documentation, you'll know that Okta limits how many API calls you can make in a given minute, for example. I think when calling the users API, I think it's a limit of about 600, but you can always check the documentation for the latest actual numbers. So if Rockstar notices that you're getting close to that limit, it'll actually go to sleep for a while, just so that you don't actually get any errors. Plus, you don't use up your entire rate limit for that minute, which would potentially cause other users to not be able to use Okta, because they'll get rate limit errors as well. So it's good not only for you, but it's good for anybody else who's using Okta. If you have a large export, you may want to do it maybe off hours when you expect traffic to be lower, just so that you don't have any contention for those rate limits. So I'm not going to let this finish, but again, you can cancel at any time if you feel that you've done something incorrectly. And it should remember, if you notice, these are the same check boxes that I had checked earlier, so it should remember, at least on a specific browser, which columns you've exported and your filters that you've used in the past. So let's see, so that's export users. Again, if we switch to groups, pretty similar functionality here as well. You can export groups. You can do it with user and app counts. The user and app counts are similar to the numbers that you see here. You can also export group rules. So just kind of, try these out, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit by experimenting. Speaking of experimenting, I have some options here that are called experimental. And experimental features are ones where I'm actually sort of modifying the built-in Okta user interface just temporarily. There's not permanent changes. When you refresh the page, it'll go back to the standard page. But you'll notice if the standard search page has a search box here. And one of the limitations is if I have a group here, for example, that says, hey, group in Okta, if I want to search by the word group, which is in the middle, the standard search won't work. So if I say group, notice that that group does not show up here. So there's two different solutions that I've come up with for this. And again, they're kind of just toys. They'll only work if you have less than 10,000 groups. But if you click the search groups, you can search for any group here. So again, if I type the group now and click search, I do actually get a group in Okta, and I can actually click the button directly or the link, and it'll take me right to that group. The other thing I can do if I go back, again, I've actually found a way to kind of modify the standard Okta UI just temporarily, just kind of for fun, just to see how it could do it. So if I click search group experimental, you'll notice this button will switch over here, and the add group button will go away, the text box. So now it says search name with wildcard. And again, I can type group here, and now it'll do that fuzzy search. Might take a second or two to load. There it goes. So it actually renders the results within Okta itself. So I see here a group in Okta. I see the description, the people, app, and directories. And again, I can click a link here, obviously, just like the standard UI, and it'll take me directly to that group. So I think I have an experimental search users as well. Yeah, so if I do search users, again, notice the built-in one just says search. The experimental one says it'll search active users, and it'll tell you that it's going to search by either first name, last name, or email. So if I type in Doe, it'll do an actual search of my user's name, Doe. The one kind of additional feature that I added here is it'll actually show you whether the user came from Active Directory by showing you the AD icon or the LDAP icon. And if you have multiple ADs, or I have multiple LDAPs here defined, it'll actually show you which LDAP it came from. Again, useful feature if you have lots of different directories. And if it's a standard Okta user, it'll just show Okta here. And then obviously I can just click on a user, and it'll take me directly to that user. So you can see that user is mastered by LDAP. Other features that exist when I'm looking at a specific user, we've talked about the verify factors and the administrator roles. It will actually add a couple items here, like the show user button gets added here. And again, that is a standard Okta, a standard Rockstar menu, but I've added it to the regular Okta menu. Let me actually switch back to my Active Directory Jane Doe user, because that one actually has another kind of neat feature. I think it's this one here. So you'll notice here that it says profile mastered by Active Directory. And here below Jane's name, it'll show you both her username, her email address, and then it'll show you again which AD she was mastered from. And you'll notice it's a blue clickable link as well. So if I click it, I get a table here. And if she was a member of multiple Active Directories, it will actually list all the different ADs that her account is associated with. Let's see. And again, so I think that's the sort of basics of Rockstar. I don't want to go through every single menu because that would probably get tedious, and they'll change over time anyway. I'll be adding new features. So just kind of experiment with it. And if you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below, or you can open up an issue on my Rockstar repo, which is on GitHub. I'm in the process of migrating over to the Okta developer repo. I haven't quite finished that yet, but pretty soon you'll see this will be the official new home of Okta Rockstar. So Okta developer was kind enough to let me host my code here. Just haven't finished migrating all the code over there. So Let me know if you have any questions. Would love to hear some feedback from you, and look forward to more videos in the future. Bye.